Ketse Hayastan. And I want to thank Rachel Gashgarian, Armin McComber, and all of you for being here this afternoon on this such an important moment. I'd also like to recognize someone on my staff. This is a good story. When she was in high school, she was in Armenia. And given when you're in Armenia, you can get persecuted in every way. My office helped her come to this country. She now runs our immigration department and helps thousands and thousands and thousands of people from Armenia and around the globe come to America. Corinne Vorparian. Where is she? There she, come here, Corinne. Just wave. Just wave. Here she is. Okay, good. Now, so many of you in this audience had parents, grandparents, great aunts or uncles, relatives who were slaughtered in historic Armenia during this terrible time, as well as many others who lived through the Metz Yekern, the Armenian Genocide. They all remember the stories. They are imprinted in our memory, and they come here each year to commemorate and push for more widespread recognition. Today and every day, I stand with you in labeling the atrocity committed on the Armenian people for what it was, genocide. Nothing less, unfortunately, nothing less. And the size of this crowd is big every year. Your energy, your collective spirit shows that even after a century, the deniers cannot kill the truth. In fact, momentum is growing to commemorate the Armenian genocide and once and for all, force the Turks to admit it. Just this week, we saw the release of the first ever made motion picture about the Armenian Genocide, The Promise. Who's seen it already? Make sure you bring your friends, Armenian and non-Armenian. Every American should see it. I know how significant it is for this community, for Hollywood, to finally shine a light on the story, put it in the mainstream for all to see. I do want to remember my great friend Sam Azadian, who helped create this great rally we have, Commemoration, every year. He helped me get started in politics, and I have been here every year since I have been senator, when Sam was alive, and now, of course, in his memory. And let me just say this. Sam was one of the first who portrayed to me how horrible the genocide was and encouraged me to be a strong advocate for human rights, justice on the Hill, and I miss him. Now, I come here every year because I believe from the bottom of my heart our sacred duty is to speak out against the terrors of the past. We owe it to those who cannot speak for themselves, those whose memory still calls down for justice, the innocent victims of the genocide in Armenia. We owe it to them to call out evil for what it is. We must stare directly into the heart of darkness and answer the questions. How did this happen? Who was responsible? Who answered the call for help? And who ran from responsibility? When people are forced to confront these questions, it makes it less likely that another Holocaust, another genocide will happen in this century. The Armenian Genocide, as we all too well know, was the first Holocaust of the 20th century. Unfortunately, not the last. Untold millions suffered as a result of the lessons unlearned. A trail of tears that reaches from Hitler's Germany to Stalin's Ukraine, to Pol Pot's Cambodia, to the Balkans, to Rwanda, to Sudan. These events are more than just a stain on their nations or their continent. They are a stain on humanity. Every time a genocide occurs, we say, never again. Time and time again, we promise that we have learned a lesson, that we will stop these crimes from being repeated in other countries. We should never fail to keep that promise. You are keeping it here today. We must never stop trying. Pope Francis said about the Armenian Genocide that, quote, concealing or denying evil is like allowing a wound to keep bleeding without bandaging it. So I stand with you today in labeling the atrocity committed against the Armenian people for what it was, genocide. I am a steadfast supporter and co-sponsor of our great friend Bob Menendez's bill, the Armenian Genocide Resolution. I was urged by group after group, including some high-ups in the State Department, don't do it. It'll offend the Turks. I don't care if it offends the Turks. The truth is the truth. Our responsibility to remember the pain of the past is a somber task. There are two sides to remembrance. Let's not forget that. One is somber. One is uplifting. There are many families of survivors here today. They will never forget the pain, but they will, and we will never forget their struggle. But let's also not forget that they are here, and the Armenian community in New York and in America gets stronger every year. That too stands against this genocide. There's an exhibit at Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Memorial in Jerusalem, that embodies what I mean about the two sides of remembrance. It's called the Children's Memorial. You walk in a dark room full of reflective glass, and in the room there is one candle only. But each of the panes of glass is at a slightly different angle, so the single candle is reflected an infinite number of times. It is meant to symbolize for that each child lost in the Holocaust, there were 1 million lives snuffed out, their unborn children, their children's children. But it is also a memorial to those who survived against all odds. Because for each life saved, there are 1 million saved, generation after generation after generation. The legacy of survival and hope against all odds is before our very eyes. We lost 1.5 million Armenians during the genocide. Today there are more than 1.5 million Armenian Americans alone. The Armenian people live here in America and in Armenia. And so let us remember that today, and let us also hope that here in Times Square, in Brooklyn, in Bayside, in Tenafly, in California, in Boston, and others across the country, we remember. Ketsi Hayastan. Here's a hard one. Shnor Hakalatiyum. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for remembering.